Secret rooftop dinner. Jimin's laughter is taken by the wind, and Jungkook confesses. His heart has never returned since that night. Don't look down, Jimin hissed, his voice sharp and tight as shattered glass, blood dripping from his temple, glinting in the moonlight. He's still down there. Jungkook froze, his breath catching in his throat as if the air itself had turned against him. Rooftop tiles beneath his boots groaned under the weight of adrenaline, fear, and something far older, regret. The scent of iron mingled with the sweet aroma of spilled wine, staining the white tablecloths still fluttering in the wind like ghosts of a dinner that had started with laughter and candlelight. It was supposed to be a celebration. A private dinner between friends, or whatever Jimin and Jungkook were pretending to be, high above the city where stars could breathe and secrets could be whispered into the night. Jungkook had arrived first, his black shirt crisp against his skin, palms sweating not from the climb, but from the words he had hidden in his coat pocket for months. But none of that mattered now. Not after the scream. Not after the fall. Not after that man, that stranger with a face Jungkook should have recognized, crashed the serenity of the rooftop like a storm breaking glass. Jimin was trembling. Not from the cold, though the wind cut sharp across the rooftop's exposed edges, but from something deeper, buried. His right hand clutched a silver pendant at his chest, thumb brushing over the etched name as if summoning strength from the metal. Who was he? Jungkook asked, voice hoarse, almost broken. Why did he say your name like that? Jimin didn't answer. He only turned, slowly, and for the briefest second, Jungkook saw it, a crack in the mask. Grief. Fear. Or something worse, recognition. Help me move the table, Jimin said finally, his voice like porcelain, beautiful, fragile, and seconds from shattering. The rooftop was a forgotten one, above a building that time had nearly erased. Their dinner table stood under a canopy of dead ivy, candles half melted, wine glasses untouched since the moment chaos arrived. It had taken hours for Jimin to arrange everything, the string lights, the jazz playing softly through an old speaker, the homemade food he insisted on cooking himself. And yet here they were, dragging a blood-smeared table over broken glass while the stars watched silently overhead. You didn't answer me, Jungkook muttered, his fingers trembling now. What's going on, Jimin? The silence that followed was thick, not empty, but full of all the things Jimin wouldn't say. I didn't think he'd find me, Jimin whispered. Not here. Not tonight. That was when Jungkook realized, this wasn't just a romantic dinner. This was a goodbye. A funeral for a life Jimin had long buried. A truth that had finally dug its way back to the surface. The rooftop creaked as if groaning beneath the weight of history. A gust of wind carried away the last echo of Jimin's laughter, and with it, something intangible, something sacred. He called you Minkook, Jungkook said. He said you lied. Jimin's eyes met his then, soft, wide, and infinite in their sorrow. I did. No tears. Just that hollow, aching honesty. You don't know who I am, Jimin said quietly. Not really. You think you do, but the truth, it's ugly. It has blood on its hands and names I haven't used in years. Jungkook stepped forward, the distance between them now impossibly wide despite the inches. I don't care, he said, almost surprised at the steadiness of his voice. I've been falling for you since last winter, when you showed up at that old bookstore like you'd lived there in another life. Jimin flinched. You can't mean that, he whispered. Not now. Not after this. But Jungkook shook his head. That night, on the rooftop, the night you laughed and sang to the moon and said you'd never felt free until then, that was the night I stopped returning. My heart, it's been here, Jimin. With you. Always with you. Jimin stared at him like a man watching his own reflection disappear in water below them. Sirens began to wail in the distance, their cries inching closer. Jimin stepped back, toward the edge, his breath fogging in the cold. I didn't kill him, he said suddenly, desperate. But I wanted to. God, I wanted to. And that makes me guilty enough. Jungkook's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Don't, he said. You don't get to run again. Not from me. Not from this. Jimin's face twisted, a war between desire and despair, and then, from the shadows near the stairwell, came a voice. Well, looks like the past isn't the only thing catching up tonight. Both men turned. The rooftop door was wide open and someone else was watching. You've got some nerve showing your face, Jimin. The voice was velvet-wrapped venom, deceptively calm. A slow, deliberate clap echoed from the rooftop entrance, and the figure stepped into the light. His silhouette was lean, confident, like someone who already believed they owned the room, or in this case, the rooftop. Jimin went pale. Kai, he breathed, the name catching on his tongue like poison. Jungkook instinctively stepped in front of him. Kai cocked his head, amused. Ah, the bodyguard boyfriend. How quaint. I'm not his, Jungkook began, but Jimin's hand shot out and gripped his wrist. Hard, don't, Jimin whispered, voice razor-thin. You don't know what he's capable of. Kai chuckled, stepping into the soft string lights. He was beautiful in a way that was almost surgical. Every angle of his face precise, too perfect to be natural. But his eyes, dark and bottomless, carried the weight of unspeakable things. I see you still have a flair for theatrics, Kai said, gesturing toward the remnants of the candlelit dinner. Wine, jazz, a rooftop at midnight. You always knew how to set the stage for a tragedy. What do you want? Jimin demanded, finding his voice at last, though it shook like a violin string stretched too tight. Kai's smile faltered. I want what you took, he said softly. What you ran away with that night in Busan. Or did you think I'd forget? Jungkook looked between them, heart pounding in his ears. He hadn't heard about Busan. Jimin never spoke about the year before they met. It was like his life began the day he walked into Jungkook's bookstore and asked if the poetry section had any Neruda translated by heartbreak. You told me he was dead, Jungkook whispered to Jimin. Jimin didn't look at him. I thought he was. Kai laughed again, this time louder, edged with something cold. Oh, sweetheart, he said to Jungkook. He wishes I was. Jimin stepped forward, shielding Jungkook. Now I burned it, he said to Kai, eyes full of steel. Everything. The photos, the USB, the transcripts. There's nothing left. Kai's jaw twitched. You burned the evidence, he said slowly, but not the guilt. And not the truth. Jungkook felt the air thinning, the wind losing its warmth. What was on it? He asked, his voice low. What's he talking about? Jimin closed his eyes. It was a file, he said, softly. One I stole from Kai. It exposed people. Dangerous people. Names that fund foundations by day and traffic lives by night. Jungkook's eyes widened. Jesus, Jimin, I was supposed to deliver it to a journalist, Jimin continued, his voice cracking. But they got to her first. The night before the handoff, her apartment went up in flames. And I knew then I could never use it. Not without someone else dying. Kai's eyes were blazing now, fury held behind a thin veil of calm. She was your friend, he said. And you let her die in vain. You ran. With my file. With my silence. Do you have any idea what that cost me? Jimin's lip trembled. Don't talk about her. You only ever used her as a pawn. That's rich, coming from you, Kai snapped. Weren't you the one whispering promises into her ear while planning your great escape? I loved her, Jimin said, and the rooftop went still. Jungkook stepped back. The revelation stung more than he expected. Kai caught the movement, and pounced. Ah, the cracks begin, he purred. How much do you think you really know about your little artist here, Jungkook? Did he ever tell you he changed his name 3 times? That the scars on his back weren't from ballet like he claimed, but from a man he once loved and left in Tokyo? Jungkook looked at Jimin, stunned. Jimin's face was carved from grief. I was trying to survive, he said. Every name I've ever worn was a lifeline I cut to stay alive. I never wanted to lie to you, Jungkook. I just didn't want you to see the broken parts. Jungkook swallowed hard, emotions spiraling. I saw them, he said quietly. I just pretended they weren't there. Kai turned his back, walking to the edge of the rooftop, gazing out at the glowing sprawl of soul. I'm not here to kill you, he said finally. Not yet. But you have 3 days, Jimin. To give me what's left. The truth, the copies, the names. All of it. There's nothing. 3 days. Kai snapped, turning around. Or I start with him. He nodded toward Jungkook. Don't test me. You know how far I'll go. With that, he disappeared down the stairwell, his footsteps silent, leaving behind only the scent of fear and unfinished wine. Jimin collapsed into a chair, shaking. Jungkook knelt in front of him. Tell me everything, he said. No more lies. No more half-truths. If I'm going to protect you, I need to know what we're running from. Jimin looked at him, eyes red-rimmed and raw. I'm not sure we're running, he whispered. We might already be trapped. Jungkook reached into his pocket and pulled out the small velvet box he had planned to open after dessert. He set it on the table, unopened. I'm not going anywhere, he said. But if I'm going to stand beside you, I need to stand with the real you. Even if that means I have to meet every ghost you've buried. Jimin stared at the box. A single tear rolled down his cheek. You don't know what that promise will cost you. Jungkook leaned in. Let me decide that. And for the first time that night, Jimin didn't look away. The motel room smelled of rust and old cigarettes, the kind of place where memory clung to the wallpaper like mold. Jimin sat on the edge of the bed, hunched forward, his fingers tangled in his hair, breathing uneven like a man trying to forget how to exist. Jungkook paced near the broken mini fridge, fists clenched, his mind circling the same thought like a wolf inside a locked cage. He had followed Jimin blindly after the rooftop, no questions. No second guessing, only to arrive at this decrepit hideout on the edge of the Han River, a place Jimin claimed no one knew about. But even in hiding, even in silence, the truth kept crashing between them like glass on concrete. You're not saying everything, Jungkook said at last, his voice quiet but charged. What happened in Tokyo? Jimin didn't answer. His hands trembled. Stop protecting me, Jungkook snapped. If I'm already a target, I deserve to know what I'm dying for. Jimin looked up slowly, his eyes hollow, rimmed with bruised exhaustion. You're not dying for me, he said. You're dying because I'm cursed. That's not an answer. You want the truth. Jimin laughed bitterly. Fine. He stood, his movements sharp, ungraceful, like every inch of him ached. He moved to the light switch and flicked it off, plunging the room into darkness, save for the faint glow from a flickering neon sign outside. Then he spoke. I was 17 when I met Kai. His real name isn't Kai, that's just the name he wears when he wants to seem human. Back then, he was charming, older, said he could make me a star. I believed him. I left Busan with a bag of clothes and a dream stitched together with desperation. For a while, it was good. Photo shoots. Performances. Money. And then the nights started blurring. The contracts were inked in blood I didn't see until it dried. Jungkook didn't interrupt. He barely breathed. Jimin continued, voice lower. I woke up in a Tokyo hospital with a broken rib and 2 passports in my coat pocket. One was mine. The other was a boy's. He'd gone missing 2 weeks earlier. I never met him. But I was wearing his jacket. Jungkook swallowed hard. Why? Because Kai was cleaning up. Tying loose ends. They used kids, Jungkook. Artists, dancers, models, people who wouldn't be missed if they disappeared for a while. And I was the pretty puppet they used to keep the others calm. Smile, distract, lie. But you escaped. Jimin looked at him, face unreadable. I ran. That's not the same. Jungkook sat on the floor, the cold tiles seeping into his skin, and the file you took contained their client list. Names. Dates. Transactions. It was meant to protect the next kid. But I didn't have the strength. I wanted to live more than I wanted justice. The silence that followed was almost reverent. Then Jungkook whispered, you still want to live? Jimin's eyes glistened. Not if it means losing you. Jungkook exhaled shakily. Then fight. With me. Not alone. Jimin nodded once, slowly, as if the weight of that decision was carved in stone. The knock at the door came like a gunshot, both froze. 3 taps. A pause. Then 2 more. Jimin's blood drained from his face. That's not Kai. Jungkook grabbed the lamp from the table, ready to swing. But Jimin held up a hand, walked to the door, and pressed his ear against it. Who is it? He asked, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. It's Yoongi. Jungkook blinked. Yoongi? As in, Jimin flung the door open before he could finish. There stood Minute Yoongi, half shadow, half warrior, in a leather coat, holding a USB drive in one hand and a gun in the other. You two really know how to F*** up quietly, he muttered, brushing past them into the room. Jimin shut the door and locked it. How did you find us? Yoongi tossed the USB onto the bed. I didn't. Taehyung did. You left your burner phone on. He tracked it before you smashed it. Jimin cursed. Yoongi sighed, dropping into the only chair. You don't get to be reckless anymore, Jimin. Especially not with people like Jungkook involved. He's not built for this. Jungkook bristled. I'm right here. Yoongi looked at him then, really looked. You still think love is going to save him? It already has, Jungkook said. Yoongi smiled, sad and tired. Then you'd better be ready to die for it. He nodded at the USB. That's a copy. The last one. I had it hidden in Daegu. My insurance policy. What's on it? Jimin asked. Enough to bury 3 politicians, 2 diplomats, and a media conglomerate, Yoongi said. And if Kai finds out it's not destroyed, he'll come for all of us. Not with threats. With fire. Jungkook stepped forward. So what's the plan? Yoongi stood. We go public. We leak it. Full exposure. No negotiations. Jimin paled. They'll kill us before it spreads. Not if we make it viral in 30 seconds, Yoongi said. Live stream. Global tags. No time to cover it up. Jungkook hesitated. And the fallout? Yoongi looked at him coldly. We're not heroes. We're just the only ones left with a spine. Jimin turned to Jungkook. This is your last out. If you walk away now, I won't stop you. You can go back to your bookstore. Pretend none of this ever happened. Jungkook walked up to him, took his face in both hands, and kissed him. Deeply. Desperately. Like he was marking a before and after on his lips when they broke apart, he said, I didn't fall for your past, Jimin. I fell for the way you looked at the stars even when you were bleeding. Yoongi rolled his eyes. Romance is a liability. But fine. Let's end this before it ends us. The rain began outside, soft and cold. In a motel room with no windows, 3 men sat under flickering light, preparing to shatter an empire with a single truth. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the signal was live. Jungkook stared at the blinking cursor on the laptop screen. One touch of the key would begin the upload. One press and the truth they carried would no longer belong to them but to the world. The motel's dim light flickered like it, too, was afraid. Across the room, Yoongi stood by the door, gun tucked under his arm, eyes cold and unblinking. He hadn't said a word in 10 minutes, his silence more deafening than any threat. Jimin sat by the bed, legs pulled to his chest, arms wrapped tightly around them. He hadn't looked up since the timer began. Jungkook swallowed hard. You said 30 seconds. Once it starts, there's no turning back. Yoongi nodded. The dead never flinch. That's comforting. It wasn't meant to be. Jimin's voice broke through the static of nerves, low and haunted. Wait. Jungkook turned. We've already agreed, not that, Jimin said, lifting his gaze. Before we do this, I need to tell you something. Yoongi sighed. Is this really the time for confessions? Yes, Jimin said sharply. It is. Jungkook waited, heart pounding. Jimin stood, slowly. His steps were careful, like each one might set off a mine. He stopped in front of Jungkook, the space between them charged with old pain and fragile hope. I never told you why I kept the file, Jimin said. Jungkook frowned. You said it was to protect the next kid. That's what I told myself. His eyes shimmered. But the truth is, I kept it out of spite. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to look over their shoulder forever, knowing I had something that could end them. I didn't want justice. I wanted revenge. Jungkook searched his face. And now? Jimin exhaled. Now I just want to be free. Jungkook reached for his hand and laced their fingers together. Then let's set the whole damn thing on fire. He turned back to the laptop, but before his finger could press the key, the power cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. Yoongi cursed under his breath. Backup generator? No, Jimin whispered. That's them. The emergency lights flickered once before staying on, casting the room in a red glow like blood on snow. A low click echoed from the hallway. Then footsteps. Yoongi raised his gun. Get behind the mattress. Now. Jungkook yanked Jimin down, flipping the mattress from the bed and dragging it to the center of the room. They crouched behind it as the door handle jiggled once, then twice. Silence, then an explosion. The door blasted open, hinges screaming as it slammed into the wall. Smoke filled the room instantly, thick and acrid. Through it, They saw shapes, 3, maybe 4 men, dressed in black, masks pulled over their faces, weapons drawn. Yoongi fired first, clean and precise, dropping the first figure instantly. The others scattered, diving behind furniture. Glass shattered. A bullet screamed past Jungkook's ear. Stay down, Yoongi roared, taking cover behind the nightstand. Jimin clutched Jungkook's shirt, his breath erratic. They found us too fast. They were tracking Yoongi, Jungkook said. Not us. That's not comforting either, Jimin gasped. More shots. The mirror exploded, shards raining down like confetti made of knives. One of the masked men threw a smoke grenade. Within seconds, the room was a blind, choking chaos. We need to move, Yoongi shouted. Back door. Go. Jungkook grabbed the laptop and the USB, shoving them into his bag. He and Jimin stumbled toward the bathroom, where Yoongi kicked open the flimsy window and helped them crawl out into the alley. The cold night air hit them like a slap, and the distant sirens confirmed it. This wasn't an isolated hit. The whole block was being cleared. They're wiping us out, Yoongi said, jogging beside them. Every safe house, every contact. Kai's burning the past. They didn't stop running until they reached the edge of a rail yard. Ducking behind a freight container, Jungkook collapsed onto the gravel, chest heaving. How the hell did he find us? Yoongi didn't answer. Jimin turned to him slowly. Yoongi, who did you tell? Yoongi looked away. You said it was just Taehyung, Jimin said. But Kai knew. He was waiting. Yoongi's silence said more than any denial. You told someone, Jimin accused, voice rising. Who? Yoongi's jaw clenched. I told Namjoon. Jimin's face collapsed. You said he was out. You said he disappeared after Tokyo. He came back. Said he wanted to make things right. I thought he meant it. Jungkook couldn't believe what he was hearing. So we were ambushed because you trusted someone from that world? He saved me once, Yoongi snapped. I thought I owed him that much. Jimin shook his head, backing away. He was the reason I got out with the file. He let me run. But he also let her die. Do you get that? He chose who lived. Yoongi stood, fists shaking. We're all monsters in this story, Jimin. You don't get to wear a halo just because you're broken. Silence stretched between them, heavy and poisonous. Jungkook stood, walked past them both, and threw the bag onto the gravel. We're not doing this now. He pulled out the laptop, but the screen was cracked, blood smeared across the keyboard from where it had scraped his arm during the escape. The USB, miraculously, was intact. We find another way, Jungkook said. We go underground. Broadcast from 5 points at once. We scatter the data like ashes. Yoongi nodded slowly. I know a guy. Hacker. Seoul University dropout. Genius. Completely insane. Perfect, Jungkook said. Insane's exactly what we need. Jimin was silent, staring up at the stars. They'll come for us again, he said. Harder. Smarter. Jungkook walked to him, pressed their foreheads together. Let them. Somewhere in the city, a tower pulsed red as the first wave of arrests began. Names were being erased. Files shredded. Bodies buried under concrete, but 3 men stood on gravel and blood, holding a secret too powerful to kill, and they were just getting started. Rain battered the city with a kind of violence that felt deliberate, as if the sky itself were punishing the streets below. Jungkook pressed his back against the icy brick wall of the underground tunnel, his chest rising and falling in sync with the frantic pulse pounding behind his ribs. His fingers gripped the USB like it was the last tether to reality. Behind him, Jimin was doubled over, coughing blood into his sleeve, the taste bitter, coppery, and humiliating. We need to get him out of here, Jungkook hissed, his voice barely audible over the distant rumble of a subway train. Yoongi crouched near the entrance, pistol in hand, drenched to the bone and more composed than anyone should have been after killing 2 men in an elevator only 20 minutes ago. His voice was sharp. There's no out. Not until this is over. Jimin looked up, his eyes bloodshot, pain stitched deep into the corners. I can keep going. No, you can't, Jungkook snapped, turning to him. You can barely breathe. That's not new, Jimin whispered, laughing weakly. I've been holding my breath since Busan. Yoongi stared at them, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. You both need to decide whether this is a love story or a revolution. Because it's starting to look like you're going to fail at both. Jungkook stood slowly, teeth clenched, soaked clothes clinging to him like regret. You think I care about being some tragic romance? This, he pointed at the USB, at Jimin, at himself, is not about love anymore. It's about making sure the ones who buried children in boardrooms and sold innocence like currency don't die comfortably. Yoongi blinked. For the first time, he looked impressed. We need Seokjin, he said finally. He's the only one who can get us onto that network without the signal being traced. Jimin flinched. He won't help me. He'll help me, Yoongi said. The name Seokjin hung heavy in the air like an open wound. Jungkook remembered it only faintly from one of Jimin's nightmares, the ones that made him wake up drenched in sweat, gasping for a name he refused to explain. Seokjin, the ghost. Seokjin, the betrayal. Seokjin, the man who once held a gun to Jimin's mouth and whispered, "Don't flinch. You'll only make it worse." By the time they reached the makeshift hacker den, an abandoned gallery behind a ramen shop that hadn't served food since 2012, Jimin's lips were tinged blue and Yoongi was limping from a gash on his thigh he refused to address. Inside, a man stood beside a wall of screens, illuminated by cascading code and flickering surveillance footage. He turned slowly, lips curled in a smile that was more knife than warmth. Well, look who dragged the corpse back to Seoul. Hello, Seokjin, Yoongi said, expression unreadable. Seokjin's gaze fell on Jimin. His smile vanished. The air between them became electric, hostile, ancient. You're not dead, Seokjin said softly. Not yet, Jimin replied, shame. I was told your body washed up in Incheon. You always did want a tidy ending. I wanted closure, Seokjin said, stepping forward. I wanted to know if I pulled the trigger that night, would the world be better for it? Then let's test the theory, Jimin said, stepping toward him, chest bare under a torn shirt, arms open. Shoot me. Seokjin's jaw tightened. His hand twitched toward his belt where a holstered weapon gleamed under the lights. Jungkook stepped between them. We don't have time for this. Who are you? Seokjin sneered. Someone who didn't abandon him when he bled, Jungkook answered, eyes hard. Seokjin's eyes narrowed. You really think you know who you're protecting? You think he didn't earn that bullet 10 times over? Maybe, Jungkook said. But I'd rather protect someone who regrets what he did than someone who hides behind righteousness because he's too scared to feel guilt. That stopped Seokjin. His face cracked for just a second, and behind it was something raw. Regret. Love. Rage. All tangled up. Yoongi stepped in. We're not here to debate ghosts. We need you to bounce this file through 5 darknet mirrors. Global. Untouchable. Real-time live drop with facial leaks. We need it broadcast before Kai even gets the scent. Seokjin walked to the screens, brows furrowed. This file, is it what I think it is? Yes, Yoongi said. Then you're all already dead. Maybe, Jimin said, voice hoarse. But at least we'll die knowing we didn't run. Seokjin was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Give me 20 minutes. As code exploded across the screens, Jungkook helped Jimin to a chair. His hands were clammy, skin ice cold. Stay awake, Jungkook whispered. Jimin's voice was barely there. Why? Because if you close your eyes, I'm afraid you won't open them again. Jimin smiled faintly. You know what I miss? What? Your voice, when you used to read to me at night. That quiet way you said Neruda, like the words weren't written, but discovered. Jungkook's throat tightened. Don't talk like that. Jimin leaned his head on Jungkook's shoulder. I just want to fall asleep listening to your voice. Even if the world ends tonight. Jungkook pressed a kiss to his temple. Then listen. And softly, with tears threatening but never falling, he began to recite, tonight I can write the saddest lines. I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too. The poem wrapped around them like a shield, like a prayer whispered into the dark. Seokjin suddenly stood. It's ready. Once you hit this key, there's no way back. You'll expose everyone. And they will hunt you without sleep. Jungkook stood, eyes locked on the screen. What happens to people who hunt shadows? He asked. They become afraid of the dark, Seokjin said. Jungkook looked at Jimin, whose eyes fluttered open one last time. Then let's give them something to fear. He pressed the key, the upload began, and the storm outside turned biblical. Seoul was screaming. Every screen, every feed, every encrypted server from Tokyo to Geneva trembled beneath the weight of the truth unleashed. Faces of the powerful flickered across the dark web, smiling politicians caught on hidden cameras, the quiet men in suits who signed off human lives like invoices, names whispered in elite circles suddenly carved into the stone of public damnation. The world was watching. And no one would sleep tonight. Inside the gallery, the atmosphere was post-apocalyptic. Seokjin stared at the final screen, his chest rising and falling, disbelief writ on his face. Yoongi paced like a man watching the fuse of a bomb that had already detonated. But Jungkook wasn't looking at the screens. His focus was on Jimin, who hadn't spoken since the upload began. His breathing was shallow, pulse weak, lips a shade of grey no living man should wear. "We need a doctor," Jungkook said, pressing his hand to Jimin's neck. "Now." "There's no doctor who'll help us," Yoongi said. "Every hospital's being watched. We're not ghosts anymore. We're terrorists in their eyes." "He's not breathing right," Jungkook growled. "Help me. Or I swear to God I know someone," Seokjin interrupted, already reaching for his phone. "But he's in Itaewon. It'll take time." "We don't have time," Jungkook said, lifting Jimin into his arms. "Then we bring him to him." Jimin's head lolled against his chest, eyes barely open, but he smiled. "Did it work?" he murmured. Jungkook leaned down, brushing their foreheads together. "It did." "Then let me go." "No, it's okay, Kook." "No, I don't want you to remember me like this." "Then don't die." The streets outside were chaos. Sirens bled into the night. Protesters swarmed intersections. Fires lit alleyways like falling stars. Helicopters prowled the skies as if waiting to swallow anyone who dared to speak truth again. Jungkook cradled Jimin tighter as they ran, Yoongi clearing the path with his gun drawn, Seokjin barking directions into a burner phone. Halfway across the Han Bridge, a police barricade loomed ahead. "Back route," Yoongi shouted. "Left, now." They veered down an unfinished on-ramp, nearly crashing into a gang of masked teenagers tagging the concrete with graffiti. "We see you now. We are not blind." The kids recognized them. Phones came out. One girl, barely 18, raised her voice in awe. "That's him. That's Park Jimin. The one who leaked it." Seokjin froze. "We've gone viral." The girl stepped forward, looking at Jimin in Jungkook's arms like he was some holy relic. "Did they really kill all those people?" Jungkook didn't stop moving. "They did worse." One of the boys shouted, "Are they gonna kill you for this?" "Maybe," Jungkook said. "But not tonight." The kids moved, forming a shield of bodies, helping to block view from the drone overhead. They ran with them, threw rocks at a pursuing black SUV. When they reached the hidden medical outpost behind an abandoned jazz bar, Jimin was unconscious. The doctor was an older man with a scar down his face and eyes that had seen too much. He took one look at Jimin and ushered them in. "His in septic shock," the man muttered, already hooking him to fours. "You're lucky. 20 more minutes, he'd have been a memory." Jungkook sat beside the table, fingers trembling. "He's not going to die, right?" The doctor looked at him. "I don't deal in hope. Only biology." "Then tell biology it can't have him." Hours passed. Dawn crept through cracks in the boarded windows. Outside, Seoul burned with a new kind of fire, righteous, angry, uncontrollable. The rich fled their homes. The corrupt issued panicked denials. Protesters built altars of shattered phones and spilled wine bottles, scrawling Jimin's name in lipstick and blood. Inside, Jimin stirred. Jungkook was there instantly, grabbing his hand. "You're here," Jimin croaked. "Of course. I thought maybe I was dreaming. I heard your voice again." "You'll always hear it." Jimin smiled, then winced. "It hurts." "You're not dying," Jungkook whispered. "You're just living harder than most." Jimin stared at the ceiling. "If they come for us now, it'll be a slaughter. Then we make sure they don't." Yoongi entered, phone in hand. "The Prime Minister's been arrested. 2 news anchors found dead." Kai vanished. Seokjin followed him in, tossing a phone onto the table. "And the people? They want blood. Yours. Mine. Everyone's." Jungkook stood. Then we give them something else. Like what? A face. A voice. We don't hide. We talk. We explain. We finish the story. Yoongi narrowed his eyes. You mean go on record? We tell them why we did it. Who we lost. Who they almost became. Seokjin scoffed. They'll still call us criminals. Maybe, Jungkook said. But if one boy looks up tomorrow and chooses to survive because he knows we existed, then it's worth it. Yoongi looked at Jimin. What about you? Jimin sat up, weak but burning with a new kind of light. I gave them the truth, he said. Now I'll give them the pain. That night, they went live. No masks. No edits. Just a cracked camera, a bottle of wine, and a rooftop drenched in history. Jimin sat in front of the lens, eyes hollow but clear, and began to speak. My name is Park Jimin, he said. And I am not a hero. I am the consequence of your silence. Jungkook stood behind him, hand on his shoulder, and somewhere, across 100 million screens, people listened. The rooftop was silent now. No sirens. No choppers overhead. Just the low hum of city lights beginning to tremble under the weight of something irreversible. The livestream had ended 3 hours ago. The video already had over 80 million views. It had been translated into 40 languages. Uploaded, mirrored, duplicated, subtitled, downloaded onto USB sticks being passed hand to hand across borders. No algorithm could bury it now. Inside the room below, the aftermath settled like ash. Jimin leaned over the sink, staring at his reflection as if unsure whether it still belonged to him. His skin was pale, the cut above his eyebrow reopened from the way he'd clenched his jaw too hard on camera. His eyes, those were different. No longer hiding. No longer running. Just raw. Human. Jungkook stood in the doorway, arms crossed, bruises blooming across his forearms where he'd blocked the doors earlier when the protesters tried to force their way up, demanding to touch the face of the revolution. He hadn't let anyone close to Jimin. Not again. Not after what they'd survived. They loved you, he said quietly. Jimin turned the faucet on, let the cold water run over his hands. They loved the idea of me. No. They saw you bleed. They saw you tell the truth with no safety net. That's not an idea. That's a person. Jimin shut off the water, trembling. What if they turn on me? Then we bleed again. Together. Jimin leaned against the sink, exhausted. I don't want to be a symbol. I just wanted to live. You did more than live. You made them feel. You reminded them they could scream. From the far side of the room, Yoongi's voice cut in. They're calling it the Lazarus leak. Jungkook turned. Who is? Everyone, Yoongi said. CNN, Al Jazeera, even *****ing Fox News. They're trying to contain it, but it's too late. 2 senators in the US resigned in the last hour. 1 Swiss banker hanged himself. Jimin flinched. Yoongi looked at him. You good? No, Jimin whispered. And I hope I never am again. Yoongi raised an eyebrow. Why? Because the moment I feel okay with what I've done, I've stopped being human. Seokjin entered, throwing a burner phone onto the table. The UN wants to talk. Amnesty International. Interpol. Everyone's pretending they didn't know this was happening, but you can smell the panic. They're trying to flip the narrative already. Make you the villain before sunrise. Jungkook scoffed. Of course they are. Seokjin looked at Jimin. And you, Messiah? What do you want? Jimin blinked slowly. I want them to know my name. And I want them to be afraid of it. There was a silence after that no one dared to break. A silence heavy with consequences. Yoongi rubbed his temples. It's not over. Kai's still out there. Jungkook's eyes darkened. Let him come. No, Jimin said. We go to him. Everyone turned toward him. Are you out of your mind? Seokjin asked. No, Jimin said. Just tired of running. We end this. All of it. No more hiding. No more being hunted like dogs while men like him sit in leather chairs and sip $1,000 wine. Do you even know where he is? Yoongi asked. Jimin nodded. I know exactly where he is. And I know what scares him. Jungkook stepped forward. You're not going alone. I wasn't planning to, Jimin said. You started this with me. You're finishing it with me. 3 hours later, they entered the old opera house in the forgotten district of Uedo. The place was abandoned officially. Unofficially, it was a stronghold. A fortress of wealth and whispers. The marble was cracked, but the walls still carried the perfume of centuries. They walked through the main atrium like ghosts returning to haunt the men who created them. And at the center, seated in a throne that once belonged to a general who sold his country for gold, was Kai. He didn't look surprised. He clapped slowly, deliberately, his expression unreadable. The prodigal son returns, he said. With his entourage of ghosts. Jimin didn't blink. You always did love theater. Kai stood. And you always loved stealing the spotlight. You gave me no choice. You could have stayed quiet. Like the rest. Enjoyed the perks. The soft bed. The silence. I'd rather sleep in blood than silence. Kai stepped closer. You always were melodramatic. And you were always a coward. That landed. Kai's smile faltered. He glanced at Jungkook, then Yoongi, then Seokjin. I see you've recruited your own apostles. Judas, Thomas, and the lover. No gods here, Jimin said. Only men. And your reckoning. Kai laughed. And what will you do? Shoot me in front of my own ghosts? Think you'll make a martyr out of me? No, Jimin said. I'll do something worse. He stepped forward and whispered something in Kai's ear. Whatever it was, Kai paled. You wouldn't dare. I already did. Kai lunged, but Yoongi shot first, not to kill, but to maim. The bullet ripped through Kai's thigh, and he crumpled, screaming. Seokjin stepped forward and handed Jimin a flash drive. Jimin crouched beside Kai, forcing him to meet his eyes. This is every recording of every night. Every room. Every name. It's going live the moment your heart stops. If anything happens to me, to Jungkook, to Yoongi, to anyone tied to this, your entire world ends. Not just your empire. Your legacy. Kai was shaking now. Jimin leaned closer. I'm not your puppet anymore. I'm not your songbird. I am the silence that follows the scream. And you should pray it never speaks again. They left Kai bleeding on the floor of his crumbling palace, surrounded by the ghosts he helped create outside. Dawn broke, not golden. Not warm but real, and for the first time, Jimin felt it, the weight of freedom. It didn't heal. It didn't forgive, but it let him breathe. They didn't run, not that day. Not the next. Not when the headlines twisted their faces into monsters, not when governments tried to discredit the files, not when the networks swore the videos were deepfakes, fabrications, weaponized drama. The world turned like it always had, indifferent, unpredictable, greedy, but something in its axis had shifted. A fracture. A hum. People had seen too much to forget. Across the globe, a movement bloomed, not perfect, not unified, but louder than before. Protesters held signs painted with Jimin's words, I am the consequence of your silence. His face, once hidden behind layers of alias and shame, now stared from murals and bullet-riddled posters, sometimes as a symbol of hope, sometimes as a threat. It didn't matter anymore what they called him. He had become a mirror. 1 month later, in a bookstore tucked into a quiet alley in Hongdae, the bell above the door rang. Jimin stepped inside slowly, running his fingers over the old, worn bindings on the shelves. The shop smelled the same, paper and dust and cinnamon from the cafe next door. The world had changed, but this place remained untouched. Jungkook looked up from behind the counter, mouth parting in disbelief. You came back. Jimin gave a tired smile. You still make that terrible lemon tea? Jungkook walked around the counter and pulled him into a tight embrace, burying his face in Jimin's shoulder. I waited. I know. Jimin's voice cracked. I didn't think I'd survive. Not all of it. You didn't have to survive it alone. I had to disappear, Jimin said. After Kai was arrested, they still followed me. They wanted me to be their revolution or their cautionary tale. I just wanted to remember what it felt like to be real. And now? Jimin looked around the bookstore, then at Jungkook, who hadn't stopped holding him. Now I want to be home. Jungkook kissed him. There were no cameras, no eyes to perform for, just lips and breath, and two people who had seen the end of the world and still reached for each other in the quiet after the storm. The world would go on, corruption would change masks, justice would be slow and incomplete, but somewhere in Seoul, there was a boy who once ran from his past, now sitting on the floor of a bookstore, reading Pablo Neruda to the boy who had never stopped believing he could come back. And when Jimin laughed, soft, unguarded, full of grief and joy and scars, the wind took it again, but this time, it didn't carry it away. It wrapped it around the walls of the little shop, around Jungkook's hands, around the cracked spine of an old book, and it stayed.